I actually went with her on one because she was scared to go. And it seemed like it was working, and then it wasn't real quick.
Diane had fallen for Michael, and within 3 years of talking, her family says he would ask her for money for different reasons. He even told her that he would fly in to visit her.
On the day he was supposed to show up, he would tell her, I am at the airport, but I don't have money to get to you. Can you just give me a little so I can... And he was in Africa the whole time.
Michael, they say, would try to convince Diane that her family didn't value her as much as he did. Eventually, Diane gave up everything, selling her home, turning her back on her family, all for a man her family says never existed.
I was angry and bitter and mad that my grandma would choose this man over her granddaughter, her family, her daughters, my children.
Her daughters say Diane planned a trip to visit Michael in Nigeria back in March. It was supposed to be a 3-month stay. She'd be back home in June, but it ended up being much longer than anyone could have ever imagined.
And I cannot imagine the horror on my mom's face when she got off that plane in Nigeria and found right away that he was not who he said he was.
The daughters say her mother didn't find love. She found captivity, held in a warehouse in Nugu, where she was only given potatoes and beer. But the trauma didn't stop there.
She said that the abuse by several men and this one that she was talking to started right away. Physical abuse, mental abuse, all of it.
Diane managed to call her daughters over a phone from Nigeria.
You can't call my phone because it's smashed. So forget about that. I hope everything's okay there. Don't call back on this number because I won't answer.
According to her family, Diane became close with one of the guardsmen who would later become her ticket back to the U.S.
He felt bad for my mom being 70 and as sick as she was. He told her, I'm getting you a ticket and sending you home.
July 9th, just after midnight, Spokane Airport security called the family and told them that Diane was back home.
But she had it in my room. Okay. He's here now. Sorry, my love, for not texting you.
That's one of the men just texted you?
Just now. I had the money. I had the $430,000 in my bank account, in the savings account. Then I had owned a house, $650,000. I got a reverse mortgage on it after I spent all the money in the $430,000. Then I just kept sending money.
Libhart says this all started about 2 years after her husband suddenly passed away.
I had no clue they were doing. I believed them. I wanted to get married again. I said, no, this guy and I talk back and forth about the Bible, we pray together, and they said, well, we got a thing coming on at the First Baptist Church in Huntsville for it's fraud and romance scams.
Romance scam is a confidence trick involving feigning romantic intentions towards a victim, gaining the victim's affection, and then using that goodwill to get the victim to send money to the scammer under false pretenses or to commit fraud against the victim. Fraudulent acts may involve access to the victim's money, bank accounts, credit cards, passports, email accounts, or national identification numbers, or forcing the victims to commit financial fraud on their behalf. These scams are often perpetrated by organized criminal gangs who work together to take money from multiple victims at a time. They aren't cool like my Cambodian Hells Angel, whatever gang. More money is lost each year to romance scams than to similar internet scams, such as technical support scams. Romance scammers often create personal profiles using stolen photographs of attractive people for the purpose of asking others to contact them. This is often known as catfishing. Often photos of unknown African actresses will be used to lure the victim into believing they are talking to that person. U.S. military members are also impersonated, as pretending to serve in the military explains why the scammer is not available for an in-person meeting. Because the scammers often look nothing like the photos they send to the victims, the scammers rarely meet the victims face to face or even do a video call. They deceive their intended victims by making plausible sound excuses about their unwillingness to show their faces, such as by saying that they cannot meet yet because they are temporarily traveling or have a broken webcam. Because the scammers are working in groups, someone in the group can be online and available to send email or text messages to the victim at any hour. The rotation between different scammers, all claiming to be the same person, is difficult to detect in text-based messages, whereas it would be obvious if a different person showed up for a face-to-face meeting or in a video or telephone call. Elderly people are often targeted because they are more likely to have assets such as retirement funds or homes that can be stolen. Based on a study conducted by the British Psychological Society, sensitive people are more vulnerable to online dating scams. Per their results, sensitive and less emotionally intelligent people are more likely to be vulnerable to these types of scams. The scam usually ends when the victim realizes they are being scammed or stops sending money. And today, we are going to be talking about several recent romance scams, as well as some people that are going to help us protect ourselves from them. So without further ado, let's just roll that intro and get right into it. I'm sorry that was the longest intro ever. Tears trickled down Claire Spencer's cheek as her beau begged to borrow £1,000 after claiming he hadn't eaten for days and feared starving to death. But all wasn't as it seemed. Jack Miller, age 45, turned out to be a scammer who used an Italian model's photos, yeah, because we're hot us Italians, you know, before eventually conning her out of hundreds of pounds. Using a fake name, he invented a heartbreaking backstory about being a single dad to Henry, age 12, after his wife died from cancer, and quickly confessed he was in love with divorcee Claire online. The mom, age 50, from Winsford, Cheshire, was conned out of £500, which plunged her into debt for months due to living hand to mouth with her 4 dogs. She sent him money after multiple pleas for help from hotel builder Jack, who claimed to be stranded in Cambodia and unable to afford food because he lost his wallet. Such a sad story, isn't it? Claire told The Sun, "When I realized it was a romance scam, I wanted to throw up and felt humiliated. I wanted to cry but physically couldn't. I felt violated and embarrassed. It took about 5 weeks for me to smile again. Aww. I lied to one of my best friends to get the money. He thought he was lending me money to help pay my bills. Instead, I was paying for a fictional hotel bill, food, and flight. He was pissed off, but has forgiven me, and while £500 doesn't seem a lot, I'm self-employed and lived hand to mouth, so it's taken a lot of time to sort out my finances. Even $1 or £1 is too much to scam from someone, thank you." After 2 weeks, he started feeding me bullshit and asking for money. I thought, are you joking? I don't have enough to eat, let alone have any money to give. In the end, I was crying. I didn't have any money because of COVID, and I regularly told him that, which made it worse. He scammed me at my most vulnerable, as most of these assholes do. Sadly, Claire is one of the countless victims of romance fraud, a crime that has risen 40% in 1 year. After more than 7,500 cases were reported in the UK and an estimated £73.9 million lost. GARS, which we'll get to at the end, is a non-profit crime victim assistance organization who offer advice and support to victims, and they say the figure is a gross understatement. A lot of people are scared to report, of course. We know the real extent of this issue is huge. There could easily be 80 times that number of victims. People are afraid, ashamed that they were taken in, and I'd hate to say it, but these well-trained people are always one step ahead of us. It's a matter of numbers for them. They work in groups and don't need £1 million from one person. All they need is £250 from 1 million people. This was published in December, and they say with Christmas just around the corner, scammers are plotting new ways to extort money from singletons and those looking for love online. But these thugs aren't hiding in the deep crevices of the dark web. They can be found in plain sight on easy-to-access Facebook groups, with the Sun discovering as many as 100 live at the same time. The most popular, which was started in April, had 68,000 members. And after we contacted Meta, the new name for the company behind the social media platform has been removed. Others are being investigated as a result of the Sun's investigation. Unfortunately, romance scams are at their highest level in 2022, which indicates that cybercrime is actually worsening. They say here that romance scams are one of the most common types of insurance scams. The scammer will ask for credit card or bank info, claiming to be in a terrible position and in need of help. According to ScamWatch, 33.8% of all losses occurred through bank transfers. Other payment methods, such as Google Play, iTunes, Steam, and other platforms' gift cards, were responsible for 30.8% of losses. The FTC says that the gift card romance scams increased by 70% in 2020. The maximum losses recorded in cryptocurrency in 2001 came from payments that resulted in a $139 million loss, with a median loss of $9,770, according to the FTC. Victims primarily sent physical gift cards by mail, but they also provided PIN numbers for digital gift cards, according to the FTC. In 2018, the FTC released a report about elder abuse, revealing that romance scams affected older people the most. Victims over 60 lost over $80 million, and victims over 80 lost almost $4 million. According to the FTC, people over 70 suffered the highest individual median losses in 2020 at $9,475 each. Also in 2020, victims between the ages of 20 and 29 also saw a substantial rise. According to the FTC, twice as many people were scammed by romance scams in 2020 than in 2019. California is always on the deep end. They even have Florida, man. Unfortunately, there is a region of the U.S. where the most people got scammed out of their money from romance scams. California, where $120 million in losses were recorded. The highest number of people were duped in romance confidence scams in California this year, where 3,110 people were tricked thus far. Romance scams are reported to have caused more than $300 million in losses, a sum 9 times higher than the $33 million recorded 5 years earlier. According to the survey, 30% of singles think that one of their close family or friends is at risk of falling for a romance scam, whereas only 11% think that they themselves are at risk. Oh yeah, sure, say everyone else is. When it comes to scams in general, 30% report that one of their family members lost money as a result, and as many as 31% report that they have been scammed themselves or have provided financial information that they later regretted. Charles Eganjalbi worked as an auditor with the DC government, ensuring people complied with financial laws, but federal prosecutors say he had a side gig breaking them, operating a money laundering scheme for a romance scam that netted $1.9 million from mostly elderly victims. What an asshole, right? There were 21 alleged victims. He's 48 and he lives in Waldorf, and he has been charged with money laundering, while his accused co-conspirator Isidore Iguagu, who's 35, of Upper Marlboro, is facing a count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, according to charging documents. If convicted, Nganjabi faces a maximum of 5 years in prison, should be longer if you ask me, while Iwugawu could get a sentence of up to 20 years. I think they both should. Nganjabi's attorney declined to comment, and the other guy's attorney did not respond to a request for comment. Apparently, this romance scam began in October of 2015, and it continued until July of 2021. Iwugawu worked as a contractor for the Justice Department, where he provided security at facilities. He also carried a firearm and had the power to arrest people in DC because he had been deputized as a special deputy U.S. Marshal. Oh, lovely. And Nganjabi worked as a tax auditor within the DC office of the chief financial officer since 2009 and is on administrative leave amid this whole ongoing investigation. Great job, DC. A Toronto woman lost her life savings in a romance scam, and she came out to warn other people to be careful as well. Her name is Cindy Brown, and she met the man on TikTok. They began talking on WhatsApp, so be careful of people on WhatsApp, I'm telling you. He used a sob story that his wife had died of cancer. Less than a year later, the man she thought she was building a life with had scammed her out of about $26,000 in a type of scheme the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre says is on the rise. In 2020, the Fraud Centre registered a reported loss of nearly $28 million due to romance scams in Canada. In 2021, that number more than doubled to more than $64 million, though Jeff Horncastle, who's a unit supervisor with the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, believes that may be an underestimate, as people are often reluctant to report this type of crime. Last year, romance scams accounted for the second highest amount of dollars lost to fraud in Canada. Brown's reported sweetheart called himself Fabian and said he was a pilot based in Jordan. About 2 months after they started chatting, he asked for her clothing size and said he planned to send gifts from his travels in Europe. Fabian told her she'd have to pay a fee to have the gifts delivered. I thought maybe the fee was going to cost me about $30 or $20 or $100 or something, she said. But when she got a call from someone who claimed to work for a courier company holding the gifts, Brown was told the fee would cost $1,500. When she asked Fabian about this, he told her that there was $150,000 inside the gift. Shocked, Brown asked him why and said he told her he'd fallen in love with me and then we're going to settle down in Canada. Why wouldn't you want to settle down in Europe instead of in Canada? Trust me, that's better. Brown was uncertain. Still, she did as she was told and sent the $1,500 using a nearby Bitcoin ATM. Untraceable money. But it didn't end there. The company kept asking for more money and threatening legal trouble if she didn't pay up. She even dipped into funds she'd been saving to fly to Singapore to visit her mother's grave. At one point, Brown said she asked Fabian why he didn't pay the fee since he was a pilot. Fabian told me because Qatar Airlines hold his account, she said, and then I just never thought that wasn't real. Eventually, Brown had cleared out her savings and was considering selling her car to get more cash for this dude. Don't do that. The situation finally came to an end when Brown, who manages a car wash, was visibly distraught at work. A police officer who was a regular customer asked her what was wrong, and when she described the situation, he urged her to report it. They say when it comes to protecting yourself online, be cautious about what personal information you share. Avoid sharing intimate photos online. Don't accept friend requests from people you don't know. Don't invest money in platforms provided by people you don't know. Don't use Bitcoin. They don't say that, but I'm going to add that in there. And don't ever send money to someone you haven't met. This here is SCARS, or also known as romancescamsnow.com. As you can see, it's the encyclopedia of romance and relationship scams. This is the world's #1 anti-scam website. You can come here to report them. They are government-registered crime victims assistance and crime prevention nonprofit organization based in the United States and Mexico with affiliates and partners around the world. It's a global authority on scams, scammers, and scam victims. As you can see, they have an area where you can read about all the different types of romance scams. They even have an area where you can go and find counselors, low-cost support groups, information to learn. Here's where you can report. They even have a link to file an FBI scam report, file an FTC fraud report, and then Ghana Police Services, the Nigerian police, scammer report and information removal request, and the SCARS official document for ethics in scam reporting, which maybe we'll go through one day. Here is where you can actually go and check out photos and information on actual scammers. They have everything in Spanish. They have a Facebook, different ones for different things, and you can donate to help keep the site running. But you know, or you could just donate to me instead, and I'll cover it all. Yay! As you can see, there's even an area here for Canada, the UK, Europe, Australia. So, you know, great site to come to if you ever want any more information about romance scams. I highly recommend coming here. Now, for the article we've all been waiting for. Meet the grandma taking on international romance scammers. Woo! Last month in Northern California, a lovelorn woman waited for a package that would never come. Janet, as we'll call her because she didn't want her real name used, had recently fallen for a handsome Turkish doctor she met online. He told her he loved her and promised to come visit her just as soon as he was done with his assignment in Yemen. But first, could she help him? His bank was shuttering, and he needed to get a box full of gold bars and cash safely into the U.S. The box was worth an estimated $6 million, and if she helped him transport it, the riches were theirs. The box, of course, never came. The riches did not exist. Her lover was not an international doctor, but a romance scammer who was probably professing his love for a dozen other women at the same time. Janet didn't realize this until 2 years into her ordeal, when she logged onto Facebook and saw someone with a different name using his exact same photos. By that time, she had already spent more than $200,000 on her fake lover and his sham package, some of it out of her 12-year-old son's savings, and she was furious. I'm going after them, I'm telling you that now, Janet said in a recent interview, adding later, and I need all the help that I can get. So Janet called Ruth Grover. Drive north out of Leeds, England, past the small town of Harrogate, then North Allerton, then Darlington, and you'll reach Middlesbrough, an 1800s port town with a population of 140,000. Keep going, another 15 miles, past 2 golf clubs, endless fields, and at least 1 crematorium, and you will arrive at Hartlepool, the cloudy seaside hometown of Ruth Grover, a 66-year-old former police dispatcher with a disarmingly friendly British accent. Grover lives alone with her parakeet, Pinda. Is that how you say that? I don't know. In the same place she's lived for 35 years. Her 2 sons, ages 41 and 39, and 3 grandchildren visit often. 14 years ago, Grover and her husband, Jeff, retired together from their jobs at the Hartlepool Police Department, hoping to, as she puts it, just do nothing. 3 months later, Jeff was diagnosed with skin cancer. Their joint retirement, meant to be spent visiting family and vacationing on their favorite Greek island, was consumed by doctors' visits and chemotherapy appointments. Jeff passed away shortly thereafter. Aw, that's awful. It wasn't until 2 years later that Grover brought herself to put the word widow on her Facebook profile. An awful word, isn't it? She says now. But when she did, the funniest thing happened, she says. I suddenly became very attractive to 4-star generals in the U.S. Army. The young army men, incessantly messaging Ruth on Facebook, weren't actually interested in her, of course. They were running a classic military romance scam. This scam usually starts with a casual connection on Facebook or Instagram. I just saw your profile and thought you were so beautiful, and leads to longer, more in-depth conversations. Before you know it, the young soldier is madly in love with his new conquest. When it comes time to meet in person, however, the soldier is conveniently deployed to a far-off location, one where he will inevitably run into some kind of crisis requiring an emergency infusion of cash. And it all needs to come from you! Most romance scams deploy a similar format. The scammer messages their victim on a dating or social media site and establishes a swift connection. They may use a sob story to get past the victim's defenses, a bitter divorce, maybe, or a wife who died of cancer. Then they ply her with endearments like baby and darling, and messages sent first thing in the morning and right before bed at night. Once the victim is hooked, they dream up an urgent reason to leave town. There's a reason why military crews and oil rigger jobs are all popular with scammers. Once the scammer has allegedly decamped for a far-off location, they start with the request, small at first, maybe a couple $100 when their credit card gets stolen, then increasingly larger and more complex. Grover has seen some scammers fake their own kidnapping and beg the victim to pay ransom. "We hate Christmas," Grover said in a recent interview. "The number of airports that will have ladies standing in them just waiting for their men to come home is ghastly." But Grover didn't know any of this back then. At the time, she just typed romance scam into Google and was horrified by what popped up. Story after story of women her own age being hoodwinked by scammers, some out of hundreds of thousands of dollars, alone in her home for the first time in decades. Grover admits now she became a little obsessed. She read every article and social media post she could find about romance scammers, staying up all hours to scour anti-scammer forums and Facebook groups. Are we not supposed to do that? I still do that now. Am I not supposed to? And she started to notice how the scammers use the same photos over and over, usually images borrowed from someone else's public Instagram account. She wanted to publish the photos somewhere to warn other women not to interact with anyone using them. But none of the groups she joined would let her post them. All the other groups wanted proof that a swindle had happened, Grover says. But I wanted to warn women before the scam. We're trying to be proactive, damn it! Romance scamming is a big business, the biggest, in fact, of any financial fraud, reporting to the FTC in the last 5 years. According to the commission, Americans have lost $1.3 billion to romance scammers since 2017, and the numbers are only growing. In 2021 alone, U.S. citizens lost a record $547 million, a nearly 80% increase over the year before. The FBI reported even larger numbers, approximately $1 billion lost to romance scams in the last year. Paul Siebenek, the lead case manager at a cryptocurrency tracing company, previously told the Daily Beast that romance scams were his company's biggest business category by far. People over 70 years old reported the largest losses in 2021. The number of reports from people ages 18 to 29 has increased tenfold since 2017, according to the FTC. Such scams can prove remarkably hard to prosecute. Scammers generally reside outside the victim's country of origin, meaning local law enforcement is of little help. Even the FBI has limited resources and tends to prioritize cases in which large amounts of money were lost. Victims who lost thousands of dollars or even hundreds of thousands can wind up feeling embarrassed and alone, which is where Grover comes in. Dun, dun, dun. It was during a Manchester United soccer game that Grover's solution came to her. What women needed, she realized, was exactly what the soccer players displayed on the field: teamwork. She would start her own Facebook group, one where women could work in tandem to keep each other safe. They would post the scammers' fake names and photos to warn other people away. They would list red flags and warning signs of potential frauds. She would call the group Scam Haters United. Dun, 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 dun. Within weeks, the page had thousands of followers. Women shared their own experiences and posted links to news coverage of other scams. Sometimes the men whose photos were stolen got in touch, looking to set the record straight for anyone who was contacted by a scammer using their name. It got so popular, they had to start break-off groups where victims could commiserate privately. Some of the women, inspired by the support they'd received, asked Grover if they could stick around and help. She didn't see why not. The Scam Haters United page now has more than 54,000 followers on Facebook, nearly 25,000 followers on Instagram, and about 20 volunteers helping manage the pages across 14 different countries. Woo! They also have a website where women can search the name of their online beau and see if anyone has reported him before. The site provides informational guides with names like Scammers in Psychology, The Art of Manipulation, and So, you in love with a handsome soldier? Think again! One page contains a list of all active UN peacekeeping missions, so women can call bullshit on anyone who says the organization suddenly deployed them to Syria or Afghanistan. But the most important service the group offers is not immediately visible. As Grover's page grew, more and more women started messaging the page directly, wondering if they were being scammed or seeking help. Once they realized they were, many of these women were so deep into the fraud that they were terrified to tell their families and friends, too embarrassed to go to the police. The victims, most of them older, lonely women, had nowhere else to turn. The messages soon became so constant that Grover couldn't keep up with them alone. She asked the volunteers she'd retained to start manning the messages in shifts, depending on their time zone. Over time, Scam Haters became not just a repository of information, but a 24-hour hotline for victims of romance scams. Several of the administrators reported spending all day from sunup to sundown working on projects for the Scam Haters group. Grover herself estimates spending 12 hours a day on the page. Still, she says, no one takes a dime for their contribution. We are damn good, she said, but we're not professionals. Successes in the business are hard to come by. Police investigations usually go nowhere. Grover has yet to see a victim get their money back. The number of new scammers and victims, meanwhile, is virtually endless. Grover consoles herself with a handful of people who write to her every day, thanking her for running the page. Often it's just a line or two, telling her they shut down a scammer or deleted a friend request based on her page's warnings. We've got to count everything as a win, she said. It's a nice feeling when you know that you've saved someone. Just this week, however, a woman who had reached out to the page last year contacted Grover to share that her scammer was being prosecuted. She even sent Grover the letter from the Department of Justice informing her of the charges and asked her to post it in the group. It was only the second prosecution Grover had ever seen. Let's keep them up, though. She is absolutely thrilled, Grover said of the victim. She said to me, I'm not going to get any money back, but if we can put someone behind bars, that's worth it. Then he also stopped them from hurting more women, right? There aren't enough quantifiable advances, she said later, after some thought, but I do feel like we've made a positive contribution. She was halfway through explaining another scam when she had to stop because someone was asking for her in the group. I think it's really cool that there is an entire group that is dedicated to helping romance scam victims. I wanted to make sure I got that information out there. And I also wanted to show you a few more romance scams that have been happening as of most recent. If you like this, please do give it a like, subscribe if you're new here. We'd love it if you joined our fabulous, amazing members. All of the beautiful people do, and you don't want to be ugly like a romance scammer, so make sure you hit that join button. And no matter where you are, what you're doing, I hope that you all have a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous day. Take care, and I'm going to see you all very, very soon with another one. Internet's being weird, so I'll be pumping out videos instead of doing streams, and then we'll just see how it goes. I'm just trying to fix it. Anyway, mwah, bye! Stay safe from those scams out here.